Joining me now with the latest is Sahil Kapoor on Capitol Hill, Peter Alexander at the White House. Sahil, I want to go to this Joe Manchin news because to me, it's not the number. To me, it's the fact that Chuck Schumer knew this number. We've known this number for 2 months. What have we been doing? What is going on? All these people publicly said they didn't know what Manchin's number was. Well, Chuck Schumer knew it. What's been happening? It feels like this is they're making it seem like breaking news when this has been sitting out there for 2 months.
Chuck, this is the harsh reality that Democrats are facing, trying to govern and do big things with wafer-thin majorities in both the House and clearly, as we see here, the Senate, with this 50-50 majority hinging on Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat who won in a state that President Biden lost by 39 points. Now, for the first time, Manchin has publicly stated a number that he wants for reconciliation. It's $1.5 trillion, and that's $1.5 trillion in spending. He said it should be fully offset, and any additional tax increases should go to that deficit number. Now, very notably here, Manchin was asked if that is his final offer. He was asked repeatedly at that gaggle that I was part of moments ago, and he did not say that that is his absolute upper limit maximum.
Right.
To your point, Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, knew this for months. It is not clear if he thought he could move Manchin or if he had something else in mind, because he has not tempered expectations. Schumer has kept expectations very high for what he repeatedly calls a big and bold and transformative package. So it's not clear where things go from here, but for the first time, these progressive Democrats who have insisted telling Manchin, come up with a number, come up with what you can support. Right. He's finally done that, and now they have to figure it out from here.
Yeah, but Sahil, I can't let go of this idea that this isn't new today. It's new that he went ahead and publicly said it. I'm trying to figure out why we pretended for 2 months that we didn't know what his number was. You and I didn't know because we didn't get it on the record. But all these senators knew. These House members knew. Clearly, the White House has known. And there's this public, I'd like to understand, perhaps they thought they could bring them up on their own, but why weren't they negotiating with this number in mind for the last 2 months? Why does it make it seem as if we're beginning the negotiation today?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and it certainly seems like Schumer thought he could move Senator Manchin on that number, that was simply an opening bid. And again, it may well be. Manchin has not definitively ruled out going above that number, but so far as we know, there have not been negotiations happening trying to get him up from that number or to get him to abandon it. What's also notable, Chuck, is that he did specify a number of policies that he supports, including a lot of the tax increases that President Biden has called for, a top tax rate individually of 39.6%, 28% capital gains tax. That's a lot more than other Democrats who are, to the left of him are willing to support. So there's quite a lot in there to work from. But just on the way here in the last few moments, I spoke to several House Democrats and asked them about that number. And they either said it's not going to fly or it's premature. One thing to keep in mind, if they try to move that down, again, there's a lot of space between $1.5 and $3.5 trillion. One thing they can do is slide dates around and make programs expire sooner to create the impression of a lower cost.
Cory Booker used the number 2.5 with me on Sunday. So we know that there is a reality, even among some progressive senators, that the number's likely to get a little bit lower. And let's see, what's halfway between 1.5 and 3.5 there, Sahil, right? So maybe that 2.5 that Cory Booker said is a sweet spot. Let me move over to Peter Alexander. And Sahil, don't go anywhere because I have a Kirsten Sinema question for you next. But let me go more to Manchin. Let's finish up this Manchin conversation. Peter, what does the Biden White House want today? How badly do they want this infrastructure bill? Because it doesn't seem as if everybody's on the same page of nobody's quite sure when the White House wants this bipartisan infrastructure bill passed. Do they want it passed today or not?
Yeah, no, Chuck, it's a good question. We've been keeping our eyes on what they call West Exec. That's the driveway right alongside the White House to see if the Secret Service and others are gathering up in case there might be some trip to Capitol Hill where he could, in the parlance of last night's congressional baseball game, kind of be the closer here. But there really isn't, it appears, anything to be closing on right now as it relates to the bipartisan infrastructure bill, given all the differences we've seen within the Democratic Party. And as it relates to the conversation about Joe Manchin's number, the White House is not yet commenting on that. They say they're not going to get involved involved, in conversations that take place, of course, between lawmakers. But if you just do, and I just looking this up, that number seemed to come out of the blue for a lot of us. But Joe Manchin himself even mentioned $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion as being in the neighborhood of numbers he'd be okay with about 2.5 weeks ago when he was speaking on a Sunday show. So it does sort of reiterate this idea. Why was President Biden behind closed doors simply asking for what the top line would be when it appears clear that they knew what the number was? The White House insists that the president continues to be engaging with Democratic allies, speaking to lawmakers over the course of the day. We learned a short time ago that he did speak to Joe Manchin himself just yesterday. That followed a day where he and Manchin met here at the White House, in addition to his meetings with Kyrsten Sinema. So for the president, there are just growing calls among Democrats to kind of be more forceful and to get better involved here. But as we learn more about Manchin's position, it appears clear that there's only so much the president can do. You're not going to bridge a $2 trillion gap in the course of a matter of hours.
And Peter, is there any, do you get a sense that members of the West Wing staff, whether it's Cedric Richmond, Susan Rice, Ron Klain, Steve Ricchetti, are they trying to twist some arms in the House to get this bipartisan bill passed today or not?
It's a good question. We know, obviously, a lot of those names you just mentioned were up on Capitol Hill about 24 hours ago, right? So there have been a lot of meetings that have been taking place, whether they're trying to twist arms or not. The way it's sort of described to me in conversations, with White House officials, that this is all part of a process. So you're not really feeling that urgency for anything to happen today, which is a bad sign for that vote happening today. And it really raises real questions about what the time frame is in which they're willing to do this. The last thing I'll say is Manchin mentioned, maybe we'll come back. Let's deal with bipartisan infrastructure plan bill today, and maybe next year we can come back with the reconciliation portion of this. That idea of next year, that seems like a long way down the road for a lot of Democrats and even for this White House.
Now, let's see if we can get to next week. Before I let you both go, Sahil, today is Manchin-centered drama. Yesterday was Sinema-centered drama. What do we know from Kyrsten Sinema today?
Not much, Chuck. She has been in some ways even more opaque than Senator Manchin because she doesn't talk to reporters as frequently as Manchin does. And there have been concerns about whether she is willing to raise tax rates by any amount. There are concerns about whether, she's flat out opposed as a red line to raising the individual tax rate, to raising the corporate tax rate. She has not given answers to these questions, and she's also not said what her top line is. So she is a part of the logjam here that is preventing, in the eyes of progressive House members at least, the infrastructure bill from moving forward. Now they've heard a number from Manchin. They at least know what they're working with. They want to hear something from her before they can feel comfortable that reconciliation is ultimately going to happen, Chuck. And NBC News, meanwhile, is reporting that there are Arizona Democrats and progressive activists who are launching what appears to be a serious fundraising drive, an attempt to get a primary challenger to run against Kyrsten Sinema when her seat is up in 2024. They accuse her of obstructing the Biden agenda. And let's be clear, Arizona is not West Virginia. She's in a very different position. Arizona is a state that Biden won. It's elected 2 Democratic senators, and there is a real progressive movement there. So she could be vulnerable. I stress could be. She has strong support among independents, but she also needs a strong support from the Democratic Party to hang on to that seat.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and I'm very curious to see if Senator Sinema shares some of the ideas on taxes that Senator Manchin has. My understanding is they may not be on the same page on that, just like they're not on the same page on some of the climate proposals. Anyway, Sahil Kapoor, Peter Alexander, a lot of old-fashioned reporting today. I know you guys have a lot of work to do. We'll let you go.